This particular case, I literally listened. I mean, obviously we've been pushing back on the idea that we need to build a $110 million mental health wing for the jail. But one of the things that really struck me during the testimony, or prior to the public testimony, was Councilman Giarrusso, who on several different kind of departments was really honing in on like, why are all these people in the jail, or who's in the jail, or why is the jail overcrowded, and this and that. And everyone should know, it should be a known fact that the sheriff is not in charge of who goes in and not in charge of who goes out. The sheriff is in charge of people while they're there.
Hi everyone, I'm Casey Ferran. You're listening to Sworn to Serve, an Orleans Parish podcast production, and I'm here with our wonderful Sheriff Susan Hutson. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit and talk with us today.
Thank you, Casey, as always.
And we have a wonderful guest who's going to be joining us, Mr. Bruce Reilly, who's the Deputy Director of Voice of the Experience, or VOTE. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, Casey. How you doing, Sheriff?
Hey, Bruce, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Now, we wanted to bring you on because there's a whole lot we want to talk about with you as one of our community partners at VOTE, and your impact and how you're seeing things through your lens in the community. Talk a little bit first about VOTE. What is it that you do, and how are you working here with us here at the Sheriff's Office?
Yeah, it's amazing to be here because it's really emblematic, I think, of the journey I think that we've all taken. Our organization was founded inside of Angola, originally as the Angola Special Civics Project. Many people around the city know Norris Henderson, one of the co-founders, now the executive director. People like Calvin Duncan, another co-founder who did, I think, 27 years for a crime he didn't commit, and now he's a law school graduate himself. And so the energy of guys on the inside to try to figure out what was happening around criminal justice and what's happening around incarceration, and learning firsthand, this legacy that kind of came through the Jim Crow era and turned into locking people up. And the fact that there were so many people in prison for crimes they didn't commit, had some really strange laws that were very unique to Louisiana, very punitive systems, and figuring out like, what can we do to fix this and flip this? And so the number one thing people can do, obviously, is educate themselves. And the number two thing they can do is organize.
That's right.
And so when, a group of guys, including Norris and Chico Yancey, another co-founder, got out in 2003, we're able to take this work to the outside. Of course, Katrina hit, but one of the first things that they had done was form the Orleans Parish Prison Reform Coalition, OPPRC. And so coming out of Katrina, where incidentally Biggie Johnston, another co-founder, was being held pretrial during Katrina. So his story of being inside during that tragedy is really powerful. And so, like, what can we do around this jail, which had 6,000 people in it, was like super oversized, a big money maker in different types of ways, whether you had contracts around the jail, whether you're getting paid to hold people for a day for the state, whether you lock people up on some bogus charge and collect that fee. And managed to get a bed cap on the jail through the city council, a lot of organizing, a lot of education. Managed to kind of like fight against this oversized still phase 1, 2, and 3 project. And then ultimately for us, we felt that the last sheriff had a lot of problems. And so, through all the years of doing the advocacy work that we do and organizing people in the community, we also got to know now Sheriff Susan Hutson when she was a police monitor. And I believe Norris had a lot to do with creating the role of the police monitor.
That's right.
And so, we were happy to like lift up the issues we thought were important around jails, and to jail or to not jail somebody, and what do you do with somebody while they're there, and then the system of prosecution, or exoneration, whatever the case may be, the public defender's office, all these things. And so all those years later, here I am sitting in the office of the sheriff, chatting about these issues. And I can tell you that when I got out of prison, nobody in law enforcement wanted to talk to me or anyone I knew about what we might be able to do better. So the very fact that we're talking about this is part of our collective journey to where we are.
That's right. Absolutely. I think about my experience to get here. My grandfather murdered by a sheriff in East Texas at the end of the Jim Crow era. And you fast forward to 80 years later, there were still officers killing people and not being held accountable. And then I become the sheriff, right? It's just, God has ways of moving things, and this is one of them. But you get moved in your journey to get to a certain place. I was meant to get here, but with a lot of help along the way. And I want to just add one thing as an aside. Deputy Director Reilly and I both went to Tulane Law.
Tulane Law School representing.
That's right.
Why has the community, why has their voice been so apparent in the work you're doing? How does it inform your decisions in this office?
From the day I was interviewing to be the police monitor, this is in early 2010. I'm in Los Angeles at the LAPD. I couldn't travel. I had knee surgery, and I was on. And video meetings weren't as prevalent as they are now.
Big deal back then.
It was big. So we did Skype, and I can see into the auditorium. I believe it was at Treme. And I look out and I see a sea of people in orange t-shirts. And that was Safe Streets, Strong Communities, of whom Executive Director Norris Henderson was involved with, had started as well, which was a real just groundswell to get the Police Monitor's Office created, to hold the New Orleans Police Department accountable after decades and decades of misconduct and abuse and corruption. That I saw the community leadership in this community and how it could really move mountains after Katrina and just being dogged. And our friend, who we now miss, Big Rob,
Rob
not
Goodman.
being here. And I got to see him in the crowd. They asked me questions. I could see how engaged they were. I was like, okay, we have a chance to make real change here. Because I remember the New Orleans Police Department when I was in law school here. And it wasn't nothing nice. So I saw that promise of change with this leadership, and sure enough, I get here and I see how they're just moving the way, and I believe in that the whole way. And my platform in running for sheriff was the community's platform. OPPRC helped put that together with help from all of the community, and so I believe in community leadership. So everything we're trying to do, when I always say my mission, my vision, my values, it's the communities.
Yeah, there's been criticism of you in this office, but there's a lot of community support that stands up for you as well when the time is needed. And that just recently, last month at the budget hearing, the council spoke a lot about residents coming in and out of the jail, and yourself and Mr. Henderson spoke up in a way that I think people could listen and hear and see why you're supporting the initiatives that are happening here. Can you share a little bit more about what you shared at council and why that was important for you to stand up in that moment?
Yeah, there were a couple of points I wanted to get across, and sometimes I come with my points sort of ready, and other times I just listen and sort of see maybe what's missing in the conversation. And in this particular case, I literally listened. Obviously we've been pushing back on the idea that we need to build a $110 million mental health wing for the jail. But one of the things that really struck me during the testimony, or prior to the public testimony, was Councilman Giarrusso, who on several different kind of departments was really honing in on like, why are all these people in the jail, or who's in the jail, or why is the jail overcrowded, and this and that. And everyone should know, it should be a known fact that the sheriff is not in charge of who goes in and not in charge of who goes out. The sheriff is in charge of people while they're there. And so those of us who do activism, we know that you have to push on the right button. You have to go after the right target, whatever, who has the power here. And interestingly enough, the judges were previously in the same position. And I said, you should have gone after them and asked them why so many people are in the jail, because they're the ones that make these decisions. And I don't believe that people generally understand how many folks are held without bail because they have some type of hold. And there was a lot of conversation with the judges about what's called Gwen's Law. It's around domestic violence, and this idea that, which comes from a good place, but it kind of gets out of control perhaps, but this question of like, should we have an automatic hold on you as like cooling off period? And that's what's known as Gwen's Law. But there's all these other types of holds as well. There's people who have probation or parole holds. Half the people who go into jail generally have a prior, which puts them either in a position of being on probation or on parole. Those people, even if you got arrested for jaywalking, and the judge wants to give you a $1 bail on jaywalking, well, you still have this hold, and you're stuck in the jail for a few weeks. And now if we don't try to get that hold lifted, a few weeks it turned into a few months, and you're still here in the jaywalking, and also did that jaywalking violate your probation or your parole? And so there's things like this that I was trying to educate them on, about why, like, there's so many people in the population. But also, if I was thinking, dude, you can just check your own website where there is a tracker of who's in the jail that the city puts forth, right? We have these amazing dashboards on the city council website. You scroll down, you see this who's in jail, and you can break out by the highest charge charged. So, if you saw a murder and you got picked up because maybe you're just driving a car or whatever, they're going to put down like murder, right? So bad example, right? But like highest charge, like forgery, theft. And so I was giving them some actual numbers that I just pulled while sitting there. And then I just wanted to use that opportunity to talk about how, the jail is either going to be a place where you can try to get people into like a better space, because they also talked about violence in the jail. I think people have too much, and I don't know if it's like well-intentioned and authentic, or whether it's like cynical, but like they have too much faith in like what law enforcement can do. Like a police officer will show up after a crime is committed. They don't have a magic wand to wave at an intersection. It's like, thou shalt not be mad at each other. They don't go to a Saints game and it's like, nobody's going to get drunk and out of control, right? Like stuff goes down. And similarly, when you're a sheriff or a deputy, the people that are coming in are going through all sorts of stuff. That's right. They're in like the worst of circumstances that any of us could imagine, and then only becomes worse by being put into a confined space and being like really limited on what you can either have in your possession, what you can eat, the air you can breathe, the sounds you can hear, the drugs that you might need to ease yourself up. And then you're around all these strangers who are going through their own other stuff. That's right. And so one of the things I pulled out of the budget was, you got $400,000 here as income from the phones. I don't have the exact percentage, but it's probably like what? Like some like, it's not even 1% of the budget, right? It's like 0.0 whatever of the budget. And, so it's just being accounted for. This is the income that we make from the phone contract, from families, from people who are putting money on the books, it may be their own money that they came in with, to call their kids, their mama, their neighbor, their boss, their person who's trying to get them a lawyer, person who's trying to get them a bail bondsman, like all this stress stuff, and they're trying to hold on to something or make something happen from a distant space where you can't just go there. And then meanwhile, you got people behind you in line being like, yo, get off the phone. It's my turn. You have someone else that's saying like, yeah, I don't care if you got next, I got next. And so there's all this tension that goes along with the other tension. And I was like, the number one cause of violence in jails and prisons, anyone will tell you, is the phones. Yeah. And so for $400,000, you're going to allow that violence to happen. And it really made the council people sort of, I didn't know it was going to have such an impact, to be honest with you. And then Councilman King kind of called me back up and wanted to know more about the phones. And then, we kind of got into it quite a bit, and that has helped a little bit of more dominoing. And I know Susan's been, keen on that issue from the outset. Yeah. But I think, and I'll just leave with the thing that I want them and others to understand is, nobody on our realm was under any fantasies that Susan Hutson is going to become Sheriff Hutson and snap her fingers, and everyone is going to be like, violence in jails is going to go away because now everybody's sort of like sane and happy. Everyone's going to get out and get jobs and careers and stuff, and and all the jails, all the cases are going to go faster because suddenly you're in charge of like the district attorneys and the judges, and it's just like that's people's fantasy world. It's like, but can we, in one corner of this universe, start building something that's better?
Yes.
That in the same way that the last system is really hard to move on from, maybe this new system will also be really hard to move on from.
Yeah, I mean, just great points. I wish I did have a magic wand, but I don't. But
you got a lightsaber.
I have to use that. But really excited about the direction that we're going in with this game plan we put together with our community. We had to start with just transitioning because I didn't get a real transition, right? So we had to get in here, figure out what's wrong, where we need to move to get things to move forward, deal with holdovers from the old administration who just don't understand that there's a new sheriff in town and a new idea. So that's a lot you have to go through, but now we're moving and we're cooking with gas, as they say, and getting our team to understand that the better you treat people, and who, by the way, are just our neighbors and family members. They know a lot of the people in here. The better we treat them, the easier their day goes. And the more we do for them, the more chance we have of making sure they don't come back. So we're trying to get that through. I really do see and feel a different atmosphere. But like you said, it's still a jail. And its content's under pressure. Human content's under pressure in there. And everything we're trying to do is trying to alleviate that pressure. And tablets can be huge. When we got here, a lot of the phones were broken. The video visitation broken. And by the way, this place was built with never to have in-person visitation. That is something we're still going to dream about getting into place. But for right now, these tablets can do a lot for us. Stay in contact with their loved ones. And I've told this before, I'll say this. A man who had some type of medical situation, and he's on his way out, and I was in the Sally Port, and I stopped and I said, well, what's going on? And he's just busts out crying. He's like, my daughter started her first day of school, and I'm missing it because I'm in here. I should be out of here by now, and so on and so forth. And just not enough phones for him to be able to keep up with her and check in. How did your day go? Your first day of school go? That really struck me. The stories are compelling. And so just trying to get in a better space where they can have access to their family. Imagine not being able to talk to your family. You got a 2-year-old?
Gosh.
Yeah.
And a lot of people forget that, I guess we have to keep reminding them, by and large, everyone in there is innocent until proven guilty.
That's right.
They are people who, in a lot of cases, have not even been charged with a crime yet.
That's right.
They're on like that early detention. They're on the maybe you did somethingness. Mm-hmm. And as we know, lots of people get released after 5, 10, 90 days with just like, there was no charge, there was no like take it easy, and it's like, wow, if that was the case, could you have done that in 5 or 10 hours?
Yeah.
And then not lose a job, not lose all your resources for when you get home.
And then, meanwhile, like if you're gonna have to be detained, like, okay, they're gonna sort it out. Like if you want us to sort of trust the system, be like, okay, they got me on something, maybe we dispute what went down, maybe I did get in a fight, but maybe I'm like, okay, I need my day in court. Well, while I'm waiting on that and trusting the system, and like banking on y'all to sort of like figure it out, obviously with my participation, I should not have my life so disrupted.
That's right.
And people should be like, if you're in the NBA and you get like accused of something or whatever, they're gonna be like, oh, like there's an investigation or whatever. Well, you're not, put into a dungeon. Mm-hmm. There's an investigation that'll happen kind of in the background.
That's right.
And we need to get to a place where that's possible.
Well, you bring up a great point. And as we've created the jail population management unit because there are too many people in this jail who don't need to be here for minor things. We have between 800 and 900 who are accused of committing some type of violent act. But the rest of them are here for or a number of them are here for state misdemeanors. Mm-hmm. And the city council passed a law saying give summonses for municipal misdemeanors as much as possible. But we're seeing people being booked for state misdemeanors.
What kind of crimes are those?
You're talking about criminal damage. You're talking about theft. You're talking about drug offenses. So these are mostly nonviolent issues, and you want to get people out of here for that. they can go to municipal court. So we've got a process now that just by first looking at the numbers, creating awareness about it, we now are putting together a plan to move them to municipal court and get them out of here quicker. Because a lot of them are here on $10,000 or less bonds, and even less than that. So they're just here because they can't afford to get out. And so that is not what we want to do. That is not what we want to be about. So we found a solution for that, and by January 1, we should be moving them to municipal court and getting them out the door quicker. That's close to 300 people.
Yeah, and I think our community, judges and DAs included, if we can start to embrace the idea that not everybody who did a wrong deserves prison time.
That's right.
There's other ways to right the wrong. I mean, and in some parts of the world, and even in your own families, someone does a wrong and there's maybe another way of making up for it. There's restorative justice. But even if we're not even going to go that far, and we don't want to give someone a slap on the wrist, well, community service can be real. Yeah. Weekends in jail, for instance, can be real. If I have to do 20 days in jail, but you let me do 10 weekends, maybe that's a way of finding the middle ground. And maybe I do learn my lesson, but you're not going to ruin my life as the lesson that you're teaching me. Right. And I think that this all or none approach that we've had, particularly in Louisiana, is killing us. And it's really just, it's a downward spiral for the whole community. And if we're really going to try to lift people up, we have to find a way to be like, look, I know you did some wrong, but we want to make you better. We want you to come back and actually not necessarily go away, but we want you to be a better part of your family, your neighborhood, etc. And that's not going to be everybody, perhaps. But again, if we're talking about a few hundred here, a few hundred there, I mean, that's a sizable percentage of people that could be done in a different manner.
That's right.
And it doesn't have to be like the DA's diversion thing. It can be just like the standard thing.
That's right.
That's progressive.
It is. And I'm still proudly progressive, right? It just makes sense. It's about centering humanity first. That's all it means. We want to, and Dr. Bergden, our former warden, used to say this all the time, we are a human services department. And that's where we have to prioritize, taking care of human beings.
I want to go back to this idea you guys talked about with how tablets or even free cell phones can reduce violence in jail. Tap on that a little bit more and explain how that concept plays out.
Yeah, so, over the last bunch of years, in particular with COVID, some contractors around the country have really, created one would say a more user-friendly scenario of having individual tablets rather than the phone on the wall. Someone can sit in their cell and do their homework through like educational apps on their tablet. I mean, picture iPads, but let's just say they're cheap iPads. You can have a phone application on your tablet, so you can call through that. You can read the news. You can download pre-screened types of podcasts. You can buy music. You can buy movies. And so, as they say, idle hands is the devil's workshop. So we're filling people's hands quite a bit. And rather than having like televisions or books or whatever, we can use technology to make this a cheaper, easier experience for people and get them connected. People can apply for jobs through their tablets. And so these are a lot of access points for people who need rehabilitative opportunities, need to stay in touch with their families, maybe need to like rebuild relationships. And so whether you're in prisons or jails, you can use this relatively cheap service. And some of the big companies, I mean, they're making all their money on the music and movies, and in some states, they're charging, let's say, like $14.99 a month for like Wi-Fi. So they're building in, just like we might have with our Roku or whatever. They're building in the costs in these different little ways. But the value, the benefit of a jail or a prison, I mean, any warden will tell you, if guys are watching a movie, it's a pretty calm day. If the ladies are gathered around and they're like doing like a workshop together, they're not necessarily in some kind of big beef. And so we need to give people things to do, and not everything needs to be extractive of like resources and money from the people that we're either punishing or, in this case, holding pre-trial. And it's not that big of a deal. And they've made them free in Connecticut, the whole state. They've made them free on Rikers, a giant jail. They made them free in Minnesota, free in California, the biggest state in the country.
Yeah, and that was such a big thank you. By starting that conversation at our budget hearing, we're now going to meet with the city council, different members afterwards who are interested in us being able to offer free services. So this was a community promise from me, and something that I really want to be able to give, which we know you're extracting so much money from families who can't afford it. We hear it all the time in here. I have to give free calls on certain days because they just can't afford it, and it's so important for them. So thank you for starting that conversation. We look forward to the community being involved in how this evolves, because we need to make sure they can stay connected. And you can use it for medical visits, lawyer visits, all kinds of really important connectivity for our residents to outside. So thank you again for that.
There probably are some, though, in the community who would question, why would we want to give residents or inmates tablets? Isn't that a pricey thing to want to hand out to these people who are convicted or accused of crimes?
The tablets cost next to nothing. Almost everybody provides them for free because the moneymaker is the services that they buy. And so that, again, is taking wealth from their families. So we want to stop that. We want them to be able to have a certain amount of connectivity with no cost. Yeah. And we can afford it.
And the tablet, I mean, you said it, like the moneymaker of the other services. In a lot of ways, the tablet is almost like giving somebody a credit card and then saying, look at the things you can buy. It's really an access point for them, so they have an incentive. So we are not buying from them. But even if we were, I would ask those same people, say, if you were accused of a crime, if your kid was accused of a crime, and they had to go sit in that jail until they sorted it out, would you want them not to have access to talk to you about their life and like whether or not they may have medications on their nightstand that they need tomorrow? They may need to call about their doctor's appointment that they have in a week and tell them we got to postpone it because they're in jail. They may have a rent payment due. They may have a car note due. All these things that you're going to have to negotiate from the inside. Would you rather just keep them incommunicado?
That's right.
Or would you want to give them an access point?
Our phone systems right now aren't up to par where they can have those ongoing conversations.
No, when we got into office, we found out many of the video visitation machines were broken. Many of the phones are broken. And as Mr. Reilly talked about, that causes a tension inside of the pods as to who can use one. You have a smaller number. Now you're going to be like, okay, you need to get off so I can talk to my loved one. So that's a huge issue. But it's also old technology that's really pricey to try and fix. So as we're moving forward with new technology throughout the jail, making it more of a smart jail, we need to do this for our residents as well.
So how does this play into the budget? Because we were talking about that first. At the budget hearing, you asked for an additional $13 million. What would that money be for? Would that be for some of these types of initiatives?
Most of that money is for raises.
Okay.
Because one of my promises to this population that works here is that we're going to take care of those who work here as well. They were not treated well either. And people who are not treated well don't treat others in their custody well. So we're moving towards treating them much better, getting them to a living wage that is on par. It's still a little below now because the living wage keeps moving up, but getting them on par with their counterparts all around the country. When we got the $2.43 raise last year, which was their first raise in 5 years, it made a huge difference. We went from 45% staffing to close to 60%. We do this, we're going to be close to 70%. So if we get this, we're going to be doing really well. We lower that population. We're now going to be able to have education in the jail. And all of that reentry work and all of that, the care for our residents, it's going to be done by our community. So that when they leave, they can walk right into those same resources.
Do you think that $13 million is, as a community member, a taxpayer, do you think that's reasonable for a sheriff's office to get another $13 million?
I think, honestly, if people want to incarcerate folks, which, I generally wholeheartedly disagree with, but if they want to take this approach that has been in place for a long time, that I do believe a lot of the people in the city agree with, you got to pay for it. And if you want something, you got to pay for it. And if you want to employ people, you got to pay for that. And I think that it's always been unrealistic that you're going to take a bunch of people, keep them in poverty, have them run a jail, and think that things are going to be all honky-dory.
That's right.
And that was a big fantasy for the longest time. And then to think that you're going to have 6,000 people in it and like an army of people in poverty, like in charge of people who are also in poverty, that's also a recipe for disaster.
That's right.
So I think, to what you're spending the money on is really important. And I just don't give any sort of airtime to people who are insincere about like wanting. If you want crime to go down, you actually have to identify things that actually reduce crime. Mm-hmm. And literally just putting more police on the beat and building more jails and prisons is not sending crime down. You're just like further dismantling the community, and you're going to actually create more crime. And we've seen that in the 90s and 2000s when there was like umpteen people in jail and a bazillion people in prison, and crime was at an all-time high.
I do want to shift gears because we're running out of time, because you guys made a big decision to donate. When I say you guys, vote, not donated, put up $50,000 to halt construction of phase 3. Were you surprised by the ruling, and why was that decision something that you guys made?
I wasn't all the way surprised by the ruling because I understand how power structures work, and they try to reinforce each other and not cause conflicts within them. And I feel like we've appealed, and we definitely disagree with the judge's ruling, which was basically that the federal judge, in this case Judge Afric, has basically absolute power over the city. And I don't know if Judge Kern Reese truly believes that in his heart, or whether he was just finding an easy way out of the case. But I don't think that legally is the case, and I don't think that would stand, because basically what we're saying is like, look, you can order the city to do something, but they still got to follow the rules to do it. The sheriff can't go rob a bank, to pay Paul. You've got to like go get the money and procure it and get the zoning the proper way. And there needs to be hearings on these things. A, to say that any federal judge ruling just supersedes the home rule charter, and B, to say that any hearing on a piece of a budget item covers all future allocations. Theoretically, under his ruling, the mayor could go and take $100 million from any part of the city budget and go spend it on whatever she wants. And according to Judge Kern Reese, that's fine because there was a hearing on it to begin with. And we just totally disagree with his interpretation of the home rule charter.
I have to say that, of course, I am in agreement with community leadership to try and stop that. I have to tell you, my jaw almost hit the floor at that hearing when y'all came forward and said, yeah, we put our money where our mouth is. That is real community leadership. I agree with everything that they were filing, and I'm going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to fight phase 3 in the federal court as well, because, I got questioned about a $75,000 website when $110 million is coming out of EMS, fire, community services, senior centers, things for children. They're almost ensuring that our jail will stay full if we don't put this money where we should put it.
One of the extra wrinkles so I was in the Parks and Rec budget hearing a few days after your hearing, and there was a grouping of agencies that were all together. The city park, Nord, Audubon, and something. I'm like, okay, they're all here at once. This kind of makes sense, but a lot of them were exactly where the money came from that she took from other programs, and then put towards the jail fund, or towards the phase 3 fund. And I was like, what ties them all together? Well, all that money that they were talking about for these departments came from a millage, a Parks and Rec millage that voters approved. So voters approved these millions of dollars to go to these specific purposes. And so I testified on that hearing, and I said, I think I know where all that money came from. It came from a bond that we approved, money that was supposed to go to Parks and Rec, and it just never made it there, which was why they didn't complain that their budgets were cut. Because I was confused, like no one's here saying, we need all this money or whatever, and I'm looking at their last year budget and this year budget, I'm like, where does it show the money that was taken from City Park to go towards phase 3? It's not there. And probably the reason it's not there, and I'm no, investigative journalist, but part of the reason is probably because that money didn't fulfill the flow. Now, if so, I would argue that's a whole other illegality of taking money that we, the voters, allocated to a certain purpose, and you have no right to intercept that money and put it to a different purpose. We didn't even file that one yet.
We're going to let you investigate that one.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, you may not be an investigative journalist, but you play one on TV, because you're doing a great job of it.
Well, I know some investigative journalists, and I really appreciate the work that they do.
Yeah.
And that, when you have, they call that the fourth estate, right? And when you have a really strong democracy, you have media that wants to interrogate power and wants to bring out like what's happening and shine a light so we all understand, what it is that our power structure is doing, whether it be judges or sheriffs or DAs or mayors. And when you don't have that, when you have media that's like afraid to speak out or doesn't have the funding to dive deep, you're going to end up getting the government, that you probably, not necessarily that you deserve, but you're going to get the government that's going to oppress you and do bad things to you. And so, we need, if anything, more media, but props to the ones that, out there. And on the jail issue, going back to Jim Muschin and Matt Sledge and, Nick Crastle and Mike Pearlstein. I mean, some of these people are doing some really good work that's been so valuable for us as a community, but also I'd hope for, people that are in power to understand, like, this is how the dots connect. This is important for everyone to understand.
So you brought me to my last point, because we're getting to our last few minutes here, but there has been a criticism of the sheriff from the public and the media. But from your perspective, I mean, what do you think, how do you think the sheriff has done dealing with this jail from what she inherited?
Well, it's kind of funny in a way, because you're in a very, I'll speak directly to you're in a very similar position to Jason Williams, the DA, where it's like, okay, I'm taking over something that's been doing, it's like a machine that's got gears in place. It's got grooves, it's got a lot of momentum. So to change that machine, you've got to slow down what it's doing, probably keep 50% of it in some kind of way, and then like build a few more gears, turn the thing, so it takes quite some time. And at the same time, to have public buy-in for what you're doing, both yourself and him are getting flack from all sides. Sadly, I feel like if I wasn't trying to scare anybody off, but I personally was like, oh yeah, you're not going to just get in there and get all this support. You're going to get flack from all sides.
All sides.
But I do think, these steps that you're taking around, even, some people are not going to care about the staffing issue, right? But like we've always said, like, the juvenile justice system's got like 300% turnover. Like imagine, like people leave every 4 months.
Yes.
And so like all these systems, if you're going to have anything positive come out of it, you got to have good people working there, and they got to be working there long enough to kind of figure out what it is they're doing and how to do it well, and that they can also take other people under their wing and train others to do it well, and care about the community. That's not going to happen overnight. And as we've seen from even just this jail, this very expensive jail, you would think it got built in 1985 or something.
That's right.
With all the things that break or that didn't work or whatever, and it's a brand new building. And if we bought that as a car, as a individual kind of person, we'd be like, well, I bought a lemon.
Yeah.
So like we're spending lots of money, but not necessarily getting the thing for it. So the best thing that personally I think about your administration is people are paying attention in a way that they never did on the old administration. And that goes for even city council grilling you a bit, which I think is in a lot of ways their job. So I don't, Councilman Giarrusso going at you for like the population there, that's fine. Like that's all in play. And then it's on us to kind of have that conversation.
That's right.
So yeah, I think overall, you're doing, as well as you can. And and the key, I think, is just to keep building momentum and, and keep bringing in as many community partners as you can, but get that buy-in from the city around both, like, look, if you want it, you got to pay for it. If you don't want to pay for it, you can't want it.
That's right. Yeah, I don't mind answering the tough questions. I just like you to ask also about the good things that are going on. Like I said, no transition, and we inherited a mess, and people left. left the organization, 45% staffing. Just think about that. And so it's been quite a learning experience. I'd like to have partners instead of just questioners. Be a partner in it, and ask me the tough questions. We're about to put out all the data you're gonna want very soon. We're moving towards that, because never in the history of this organization did this data go out like that, and it was inaccurate. So we're moving to a whole different era. I can't wait until that happens. But yeah, we'll answer the tough questions, and we're always going to be moving in the direction our community asked us to do. But those are systems. You got to create the systems to do that, and that is a lot of work. So we're on it.
All right. Thank you guys. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
We might have to come back with you another time when we get more of these things put in place.
Hey, I work up the street, you know what?
Yeah, we'll get you back in here. We want to thank you, our listeners, for taking the time to sit and listen to this podcast. And as always, send in your questions. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to hear about, so we can use this as a platform for you to hear from us. So thanks for listening. We'll see you here next time.